Consider this an updated version of an old deleted video from 12-13 years ago. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have deleted it, but here you go. So when my nephew J-Map was a kid growing up with his mother and sister, no thanks to his uncle, he got interested in rock and metal when he was a preteen. So I introduced him to all the core groups like Metallica, Maiden, and he introduced me to a lot of newer bands at the time he discovered, one of them of course being Nightwish. Of course, he being the rocker and his younger sister and mother being more into contemporary pop and country, pretty much what everybody else listens to, they had some conflicts. One day they were in the car and he and his sister were switching radio stations. His sister puts on a station that's playing Snoop Dogg, and in response J-Map switches it and the radio station is playing Cyanide by Metallica. And just when J-Map thought he won the battle, his sister started whining and said, "Oh, come on, this stuff is worse than my stuff." And his mother, of course, sides with the sister and tells J-Map to switch it back to Snoop Dogg, which pissed him off, of course. So J-Map later vented this story to me, and noticing there just weren't very many metalheads in his small Montana town, especially those his age. So he asked me, well, why aren't more people into metal? And my answer, because it's not for everyone. Now this was in 2008. We are now in the 2020s, and this answer is still very true and relevant. So there are reasons why heavy metal is not for everyone, and it's both beneficial and it also hurts the genre as a whole. The first reason is that there's just way too many misconceptions about it. This one's always a common one. Oh, it's just a bunch of screaming, I can't understand what they're saying. And they just assume all I'm listening to is something like this.
Nope.
That's just a tiny sliver. There's a ton of heavy metal styles, many of which are a lot more melodic and use clean vocals with very little screaming involved. Then, of course, there's the whole dark satanic thing.
So 8 times it refers to the Lord Jesus Christ as the son of Pantera. You say, well, who's Pantera? Well, it's not the metal band, you know, from the 80s. But let me tell you something. When I'm done explaining who Pantera is,
on home, boy.
You'll realize how satanic that metal band is.
Yeah, there was a time when some Norwegian black metal members got arrested for burning down churches and murdering people. But that was pretty much the extent of it. For everyone else, it was always just part of the gimmick. In their heyday, it was Black Sabbath. In the 90s, it was Marilyn Manson. Nowadays, it's Ghost. There's a ton of misconceptions, and honestly, going over all of them will be worth another video. But the mystique is part of the charm, and it's something that attracts a lot of people who hear about it and want to check it out for themselves. The second reason is that it's simply just too intense for a lot of listeners. Oh, I like everything, but sometimes I'm hardcore, like Metallica and AC/DC. When I was on a missions team on the Zuni Pueblo, there was a local band playing covers of bands like Drowning Pool and Disturbed. And one of the team leaders was acting all scared and saying, "Oh, they're out there playing hardcore music." And I just looked at her like, "Lady, you have no idea." As benign and accessible as Metallica's radio hits are, that is as quote-unquote extreme as a lot of people will go. Therefore, to them, that's the loudest and heaviest music they can stand. Sure, Metallica has their share of thrash anthems, but many of the bands that got influenced and inspired by them are much more extreme in that sense. You know, my Headbangers Ball playlist can get pretty intense when Spit Out the Bone is considered melodic and easy. Even if I have a much higher line where I say, okay, I don't need complex patterns, blast beats, and distorted growls every other section, that's a lot of potential content to dive further into, and that is of course why I love heavy metal. But again, diving into the world of heavy metal and appreciating the more extreme styles requires you to get out of your comfort zone. And that's just something not a lot of people are willing to do. Okay, I've heard Enter Sandman. Siri, play me Big Green Tractor by Jason Aldean. The third reason is a result of the true prior. It just simply doesn't appeal to a wide audience. Oh, sure, YouTube has helped keep the genre alive, and I think streaming services as a whole have done a ton for artist exposure, and labels like Nuclear Blast are awesome in that I love being able to discover more artists, share their songs, and in return, get introduced by fellow metalhead friends. We have awesome fan channels dedicated to it who can both make fun of the genre and its faults, but also remind us why we love it. Heavy metal covers of video game songs. Awesome! Reactions to heavy metal songs by people who don't listen to metal. Awesome! But as great as this is, the world of heavy metal is still something that has a niche audience. Sure, the people within the world are comfortable, but because that world is not as exposed and still feels exclusive, it's something you really have to go looking for. To all the asshole commenters who bashed me for saying rock was never mainstream, and pointed out all the popular bands over the years, they clearly didn't get the context. What are you most likely going to hear on your day-to-day activities, even when you don't want to? You know what it is, the top 40 or whatever is in. You'll hear hip-hop, you'll hear country, you'll hear pretty much anything that's catchy and isn't too distorted. It's simple, safe, and much easier to digest for most people. And whatever you do hear on a rock station is always going to be a fraction of the rock and metal scene compared to what many pop stations will play. Yeah, certain bands got big and cemented their status in pop culture, but one, a genre as a whole has never been mainstream, and two, the bands that made it were still alternatives for people who couldn't stand what was big and popular at the time. If you don't get that context, you're an idiot. The fourth and last reason why metal isn't for everyone is that their fans are their own worst enemy. I myself am guilty of it too. That elitist attitude that my favorite genre is the music of the gods and everything else blows. Sure, fans of rap will say the same thing about their rap heroes, and fans of country will say the same thing about their country stars, but it's a lot more prevalent in the rock and metal scenes, at least in my opinion. The reasons behind the elitist attitude actually do have good intentions. We metalheads pride ourselves in being part of that fandom. And whenever there is a show or a festival, we love getting together and supporting our favorite bands. It doesn't matter how much I don't know you. If you're waiting in line with me to get to the front of the rail, you're instantly a friend of mine. But, oh, wait, that's a band you don't like? Oh, wait, that's not true metal. No, real metal doesn't sound like that. You're a poser, man. You're a poser for liking that band. Oh, wait, one of the band members plays keyboards? Nah, that isn't what metal is. How dare you add extra layers and atmosphere to the sound? Not enough double bass or blast beats? Pfft, that shit's too melodic, man. If there's only one bass drum on the kit, I'm not interested. It goes both ways. A lot of older fans from the 80s hate the bands with screaming vocals, and a lot of the fans who love the growly stuff think the older bands shouldn't be considered metal anymore. And then, of course, there seems to be this purist attitude that once a band makes it big, they're not cool anymore. Yeah, I was listening to these guys before their song got featured on Guitar Hero.
Yeah, that band sold out. Now my little sister likes them, so they're not legit anymore.
Plus, the most popular bands are always just cool to hate. Metallica, Slipknot, Avenged Sevenfold, Ghost, Five Finger Death Punch. Or you're someone like Bring Me the Horizon who gets shat on by metal elitists for playing deathcore, and then you get accused of selling out when you shift into pop rock territory. Oh, Count Your Blessings is your only good album. You were probably the ones rejecting them when they were playing that album. So yes, we metal fans can be the most passionate, supportive, and loyal fans around. That part is great. And we should be encouraging and open-minded enough to those outside the fandom, instead of just saying, well, your music sucks and you're an idiot for listening to it. Elitists are the reason why a lot of people, especially younger listeners, are turned off from checking out heavier forms of music. Am I saying that we should make heavy metal mainstream, or at least back to the levels it was during the hair metal days? No. Metal does not have to be for everyone. We like that we can enjoy the complex thrash beats, the blistering solos, the passion and energy that flows from every track. Some of us love the longer songs that have different sections, odd time signatures, or we just love the subgenres that add more layers and atmosphere and make the songs epic. To us, that stuff is beautiful, and we get why it's not exactly easy on the ears to a lot of people. We love the brotherhood that exists between the fans, and we love being able to say, well, if this music doesn't make the hairs on your arm stand, then judging by the thousands of fans surrounding us, we're doing just fine without you. But you want to keep reminding people why we love the genre and what makes it awesome? Then we have to stop calling everything we don't like a bunch of poser shit. An example, you don't have to like or enjoy Ghost. Quite frankly, I get why you don't. But they're obviously doing something right, and for younger listeners, they will serve as a gateway further into the genre, much like how bands like Linkin Park, Disturbed, plus eventually Metallica and Iron Maiden were a gateway for me. We need our catchy hit singles, we need our less extreme forms of metal to exist, and we need bands with appeal, charm, and a little mystique, because more extreme bands like Cannibal Corpse just wouldn't have that door open for people wanting more. I don't care how many people have seen Ace Ventura. Not a lot of people enjoyed that song, but people that enjoy Metallica are pretty much more likely to get into that world, and that's where I'm getting at. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your heavy metal astronomer, Desert Coyote 22, and I'll see you next time.